0. That's how often federal law defines accommodations or modifications. So where does that rule come from? There's one sentence in the federal rules that names by name every accommodation and modification you personally must be told about. Pocket that sentence. Almost nobody gets shown it.
I'm Erica, and here's the rule in one line. An accommodation changes how a student reaches the content. A modification changes what they're expected to learn. Two very different legal animals.
Episode 1 proved these contents are fixed by federal regulation. Episode 2 built the present levels the rest stands on. Episode 3 built the goals out of that. Today, one paragraph further down.
Liam here. Can I ask the dumb version first? If the rule's that clean, why does anybody get it wrong?
Because the tool never tells you which it is. Text-to-speech on a science article is an accommodation. The same text-to-speech on a reading comprehension test is a modification. Same software, same child, same afternoon.
Careful though, that's not our rule of thumb. That's a state education agency in writing this April.
A state? I thought this whole series was federal.
Here's the myth, and it's a good one. That how versus what comes from IDEA. It doesn't. The regulation has a paragraph where both live, 34 CFR 300.320, paragraph A4, and it never tells you which is which.
So how versus what comes from your state, your district, and decades of practice. Not a reason to ignore it. A reason to know which layer you're standing on.
Where is the line though? Know your layer doesn't help me at 2:40 on a Tuesday.
It tells you which mistakes actually bite. A modification nobody wrote down is not a kindness. It's an IEP being delivered differently than it says, and the name on that delivery is yours.
Deliver what's written. Route changes to the team. Narrower than it feels at 4 in the afternoon with a stack of copies in your hand.
B chat's ahead of me again. Somebody posted the thing I was going to sit on all episode. If the rule isn't federal, what am I actually being held to?
To the document. Every line of it.
And to one sentence nobody has ever read you. We get to that sentence, and it is better news than it sounds. Which is still a strange way to run one thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think. Strange way to run a system. Professor Kowalski sent me one line before we started, and it's the line I want to open on. She's here to help.
The line was this. People argue about the two words as if the words are the thing. They aren't. The task is.
The objective of the task decides which one it is. Which is why the approved accommodations list your district handed you can't answer it. That list doesn't know what you assigned.
Then explain it to me like I've never seen the form. One task. Walk me through one task.
Before that, read the actual line, not the paraphrase. What does the state guidance say an accommodation does?
Texas puts it flatly, and I'm quoting. Accommodations change how the student learns or demonstrates knowledge and are intended to provide the student with access to the general education curriculum. Then the clause doing all the work. They do not change learning expectations. The objectives of the course or activity remain the same.
Modifications change what the student is expected to learn. Same guidance, uncomfortable half out loud. The student will not master all grade level content. Call it the objective test.
Simplified is the word good teachers walk straight past. The shorter version, 6 vocabulary words instead of 12, and what you've actually...
Cynthia, stop there. That one's mine. Moved the measurement. 12 words was the task. 6 is a different task. Nobody at that table voted on it. You did.
Airport security, same terminal, 2 lines. The gate is the grade level standard. The lane they route you through is the accommodation. A shorter queue, longer at the scanner. You still get screened, you still board the same plane. A modification is a different plane to a...
Cynthia, then what's the pre-check lane? They skip the shoe scan entirely. That's lighter screening, not a different route. Your picture doesn't cover it, which is where the airport stops helping. Nobody at that gate certifies you were screened like everyone else. School does. That certificate is the grade.
Plainly then, change the route you accommodated. Change the destination you modified. One clean step every time.
And a route can look startling and still be a route. Text-to-speech, grade level science article, a student who reads below grade level. Texas calls that an accommodation.
Put them side by side. Left. Objective, grade level science content. Support, text-to-speech. Expectation unchanged, and the grade still means what it says.
Right? Same student, same software, and now the task is a reading comprehension test at grade level. The expectation just changed, and so did the grade.
The task chose, not the software. Look at a real one. 7 target words on the page, 1 highlighted. Whether that is the whole list or half of it is invisible to anyone reading the grade.
6 words on a page. And no way to tell from the grade.
Hardware never settles it either. A refreshable Braille terminal isn't a lighter version of the text. It's the identical text through fingertips instead of eyes.
Guess before she answers. 2 rules. 1 is real. A calculator is always an accommodation. B, it's a modification when the calculating itself is tested. Liam.
Confidently A calculator doesn't know what the question is. 3 digits times 2, 12 times 11, same thing either way.
B, and Texas spells it out.
Multi-step word problems, objective is the reasoning. Calculator, likely an accommodation. 3-digit by 2-digit multiplication with regrouping. Objective is the multiplying. Sane calculator, likely a modification.
Oh, that's so much worse. The calculator doesn't change. My assignment does.
So one question survives a real classroom. What is this task measuring? Ask it again in September because the same support can be an accommodation in 4th grade and a modification in 6th.
Liam, you've been chewing on something? Say it.
I hate that you can tell. Fine. If the state wrote all of this, what did the federal regulation actually give me?
Everything so far cost you an argument in a hallway. The next 10 minutes is where teachers find out the thing they stood on isn't load-bearing.
I have to say this first. I spent an evening with the actual regulation and a fountain pen marking every place these 2 words appear. The page stayed almost empty.
How empty?
The definitions live in one place. 34 CFR 300.4 through 300.45, 39 defined terms. Free appropriate public education, related services, special education, supplementary aids and services.
An accommodation isn't one of them. Neither is modification. 0 definitions out of 39.
So when a principal tells me IDEA requires this accommodation, the honest answer is that the statute never actually...
Liam, stop there. It's in the definitions. It has to be.
It isn't. I checked twice because I assumed the same thing you just did. 39 terms, neither word among them. What you get instead is an address, not a definition.
You're right, and I'd have bet money and lost. So here's the sharper question. If neither word is defined, what is that paragraph actually doing?
Read it off the printed page. A statement of the special education and related services and supplementary aids and services. Then, in the same breath, program modifications or supports for school personnel.
Supports for school personnel. That phrase is doing something I don't understand.
It pays for your training, your co-teacher, your consult time. That's the safest reading. I mean, safest if your district writes it that way because the regulation runs program modifications and supports for school personnel together in one clause and never pulls them apart.
Now the other word, watch where accommodations turns up in the 7 required contents exactly once.
Paragraph A, 6, 1. A statement of any individual appropriate accommodations that are necessary to measure the academic achievement and functional performance of the child on state and district-wide assessments. That is the entire federal use of the word.
The question I keep circling is smaller than it sounds. So the federal rule for accommodations is a testing rule?
2 ways to answer, and the first is a repair. It isn't a rule for accommodations, it's a rule for accommodations on a state test. Far smaller thing, and that gap is where teachers get hurt. One more place though, and it's the closest thing federal law hands you to a definition. It's on the department's own site.
Section 300.160, Participation in Assessments. State guidelines must identify only those accommodations for each assessment that do not invalidate the score. Say that again? Do not invalidate the score.
And my model's simple. If a support changes what the score means, it's a modification. If it doesn't, it's an imphrase with orism.
Liam. Careful, specially designed instruction is defined. 300.39. Adapting the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction. Content. Right there. So your model has federal law authorizing modifications and never naming them.
Then I'm missing a condition. Read the rest. The adapting must ensure access to the general curriculum so the child can meet the standards that apply to all children. Content can move. The standard can't.
And that handles both. Text-to-speech on the science article. Delivery moved, standard didn't, accommodation. 6 words instead of 12. Standard moved, modification, needed a team. Keep one line out of this section. Federal law never told you what an accommodation is. It told you what one may not do. The classroom wording is Cynthia's lane, honestly. I'd get it wrong in front of a parent.
It isn't complicated. If the change makes the score mean something different, it isn't an accommodation. Same objective test we ran on the calculator, wearing a suit. And before we get to what you do Monday, there's a number in all this almost nobody in a school can name. It caps how many students with the most significant cognitive disabilities get counted on the alternate assessment track, and it runs into the word diploma. Carry that number with you.
Diploma, you said diploma. There's a line on a graduation program nobody reads, and I think it's the whole argument.
%. That's the cap. Professor Kowalski is back with us, already 2 of these in, and she isn't done.
1% of every student assessed in the state, not 1% of your building.
Alternate standards are a different assessment path, and only for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. An ordinary modification does not put a child there.
1% of my district, so a handful of kids? No, it is a state number, not mine.
State number. A district can go over it. It just has to justify going over it.
1.0% in the federal rule. That's the number I told you to carry. 200.6.
And the word alternate is doing enormous work in that sentence.
Alternate to what?
Alternate academic achievement standards, not the grade level ones.
So a student on alternate standards is being measured against a different
test.
A different standard? The test follows the standard, never the other way round.
Draw the chain, it's 5 links, and every one of them is written down somewhere.
Alternate standards, the alternate assessment, the 1% state cap, the parent notice, the diploma line.
Now the diploma half, and this is the part that is genuinely written down.
Parents must be told how it may delay or otherwise affect a regular high school diploma.
Must be told. Federal must?
Federal Rule 200.6, paragraph D, 3.
And there's a harder line than that one sitting on the department's own page.
A regular high school diploma shall not be aligned to the alternate academic achievement standards. That is the sentence.
So a modified kid can't graduate.
No, and federal law is explicit the other way. A state may not preclude a student who takes the alternate assessment from attempting to complete the requirements for a regular high school diploma. What a regular diploma cannot be is aligned to alternate standards. Graduation rules themselves are the state's,
Which is exactly why we keep naming the layer.
Different plane, nearer city.
And the second that diploma is handed over, the district's obligation is
Wait, over? Like that day?
that day. A regular diploma ends the obligation to provide a free, appropriate public education.
and it counts as a change in placement. Prior written notice in writing before it happens.
Which is a protection, not a formality.
What about a certificate of completion? Does that end it too?
Honestly, I'd have to check that against your state's rules before I said it out loud.
The federal definition excludes it. What your state does with it is your state's business.
Picture the actual morning. Folding chairs, a gym, somebody's grandmother already crying.
And a legal line crossing in that same second that nobody in the room can see.
That is genuinely unsettling.
The thing to take from? No, smaller. You are not the person who decides any of this.
You're the person whose classroom evidence decides it for the team.
Professor Kowalski, thank you. You handed us the two hardest sentences in this.
Seconded. I'll be quoting the score one for years.
Quote it accurately, or I'll hear about it.
Same building, same gym. Two different finish lines.
Two different finish lines.
Two. and only one of them is a diploma.
Okay, different animal entirely. Monday, second period. The kid, the worksheet, 4 minutes before the bell.
Then run the objective test before you change one word on that page. What is this thing measuring?
And be honest, because the worksheet never says. A page of multiplication might measure reasoning or recall. Only the person who assigned it knows.
Say I'm sure it's reasoning, then what?
Then an access change inside a support the IEP already names is yours. Read it aloud, extend the time, move him somewhere quiet.
And the second it touches what he's expected to learn, you stop. Grading, credit, and standards right on that one, and none are a single teacher's to move.
5 moves in order, and none of them need anybody's permission.
Name what the task measures. Ask whether your change touches it. If not, make it and log it today. If it does, stop and message the case manager. Then bring the work you have.
Take a composite. A 7th grader hands back a science quiz with most of it right. Good day. Except an adult read the passage aloud and nobody wrote it down.
Read the passage or read the questions.
The passage, which was the accommodation, and it was right. 2 weeks later, somebody reads a reading test aloud too, because by then that's what we do for Devin.
So it stopped being a decision and turned into a habit.
March, maybe April, the team is staring at a reading score that matches nothing else in the file, and not one of them can work out why.
The score wasn't wrong. It was measuring the wrong thing, and I want to push on the order because the opposite order has a serious argument behind it. Routing everything through the team is slow. Scheduling takes a week, sometimes 3, and a child sits in the wrong support while the adults find a Thursday.
Then ask a different question. Not how fast can you change it? What can you change today without touching the objective at all?
Which is most of it. Read it aloud, give the time, 2 sittings, front row. Everyone is a route, not a destination.
Liam's right about the cost of waiting, and here's the ruling anyway. Adjust the route today and document it. Document it, because an undocumented kindness is indistinguishable from a violation 6 months later.
And here's the sentence I told you to pocket. 34 CFR 300.323 paragraph D. Your school must make the IEP accessible to you and must inform you of the specific accommodations, modifications, and supports to be provided for the child.
That is the only place in the regulation where all 3 words stand together. And it isn't describing the document. It's describing what somebody owes you.
So asking isn't me being difficult. It's collecting something I'm already owed.
And your certificate question, I checked. Federally, a certificate of completion is not a regular diploma, so it doesn't end the obligation a diploma does. What your state adds on top, look up tonight. It costs 1 email written in the first quiet coffee before anyone else wakes up. That's the price of never being the person who guessed.
You produce the evidence. The team changes the document. 2 different jobs, and only one is yours.
That's what the law owes you when the student has an IEP. Next time, the mirror image. 504 plan instead, and which protections quietly don't travel.
2 things I'm keeping. What the task measures and who has to tell me.
So the one line to keep is short. Change the route, never the destination.
Send this to the gen ed teacher down the hall. 300.323 paragraph D is owed to them too, and odds are they've never seen it.
If you're running this test on a worksheet tomorrow, like the video and subscribe. That's how these reach the next teacher who needs them. So run the objective test on the last thing you changed for a student. Which one was it really? Go look at one task before you change it. I'll see you at the 504.